Each year, me and one of my closest friends, who we will call Dane, go down to visit his grandparents at the cabin in a nice, small, peaceful town in the North Georgia mountains. Me, my friend, and his grandpa are all outdoors kind of people, so we are always looking for something fun for all of us to do around the area. One night, we decided to go on a night hike on a trail not too far from the cabin. Now, this isn't the kind of trail you're probably thinking of. It really is a gravel dirt road, but a lot of hunters, campers, motorbikers, and backpackers use it. We headed out to the trail, and right as we pulled up, ready to make a move, we noticed an older, beat-up, suspicious-looking black Chevy SUV with two middle-aged men in it parked next to the entrance of the trail. Now, even though this is a safe area, drug deals and other kinds of sketchy activity can occur deep in these woods, so we avoided going on our trail altogether and just decided to head down into another trail about half a mile down the road. We reached it in no time, pulled up about 50 or so feet into the trail just outside of view from the road, parked the truck and got out and started our hike. Things were off to a great start until we got about a mile in, when we started to hear a dog bark from probably around 300 feet away. We decided to keep going, but the dog just would not stop barking, and we didn't know if the dog was on a leash or not, and could just come and attack us. So we decided to turn around and head on back. When we were about, I would say, 1,000 so feet away from the truck, we could see a car sitting behind my friend's grandpa's truck, running with its headlights on. This instantly made us worried, because who would just roll up behind a random truck at 10 at night on an isolated trail? Keep in mind, you would have to drive into the trail to see where the parked truck was. It was not visible from the road. We stood there for about 5 minutes trying to see if we could see anybody, but since it was so dark and pretty far away, it was hard to see anything. Fortunately for us, there was a pretty large tree next to the trail we were able to stand behind, so there was no way they could see us from where they were parked. My friend's grandpa took these night vision binoculars we had with us to try and get a better look, but it was still not much help. We decided to just stand there and wait for them to turn around and leave, because there was no chance we were going to go back with this random car with potential bad people in it sitting behind our truck. After about 10 minutes of just standing there, to my absolute horror, the car drives around the truck and starts to head down the trail in our direction. As fast as we could climb, we went up this hill right next to us and hid behind a log that was sitting up on the top. A few seconds later, the same beat-up black Chevy SUV we saw outside the other trail we were supposed to originally hike on comes driving down where we were just standing not even 15 seconds ago. The car had its windows rolled down and started to slow down as it drove past us. Me, my friend, and my grandpa were terrified. Our hearts were pounding out of our chests, and we were scared these guys would stop and sit there, or even worse, get out and start looking for us. Fortunately, the car just kept driving and never stopped. As soon as the car was out of sight, we got out of our hiding spot, booked it back to the truck, and got the hell out of there. I know this may not be as scary as some others, but to us it was definitely pretty frightening. We don't know who or what those guys wanted. My guess is that they had a stash on that trail deeper in the woods and thought we stumbled upon it and were out there to confront us, or even worse. A lot of things could have gone wrong. We could have walked back to the truck just as they pulled in. What if they came out and looked for us? What if they slashed the tires to the truck? Or what if they turned their headlights off and sat there and waited for us to come back? My friend and his grandpa actually went back in the daytime a few days later to the exact spot where we were hiding and took some pictures. The first picture is where we were standing, looking at the truck and the car behind it. Off in the distance you can see our truck parked. That's exactly where we had it parked the same night. Just off to the left is the hill we rushed up to hide from the car. In the second picture, you can see where our hiding spot was. After my friend and his grandpa went back, they said we were very lucky to have made it up successfully, as it seemed impossible to do it as fast as we did, especially with all the shrubs and thorns in the way. If we got up there just even 2 seconds later, we would have been seen. I can only imagine what would have happened if we didn't make it up that hill and those guys saw us. So this was at the start of autumn, one of my more favourite times of the year. A lot of my family's and friends' birthdays were around this time, so that involved plenty of planning and fun times ahead. I was always in the best of spirits, but what I didn't think about were any consequences to any actions. I mean, who does? One of my friends was a bit of a daredevil, and so I had planned to take him on a ghost hunting trip in some woods a few miles away from where we lived. Just to say, we live in Australia. Now when I say a ghost hunting trip, I do not mean one of those tourist types that you pay someone to give you a tour and things. Oh no. I actually did some research and found a forum speaking of a local wood that was extremely haunted. Sadly, we couldn't go on the birthday as the family had other stuff planned, which was fine, so we went the next day. Myself, my friend, and his girlfriend drove to these woods, and before we even pulled over, we had his girlfriend say that things didn't feel right. Of course, she was a girl. We only thought she was being a bit too cautious, obviously being smarter than us. We found a little lay-by where we could park the car and got ourselves hyped up to go and do it. Thing is, we may have parked the car on the outskirts of the forest, but boy was it pitch black. Scary dark. Even I was feeling nervous about it all. But it was one of my birthday surprises, and I could see he was pumped for it. So, we got out. Eventually our eyes adjusted to the darkness, and we set off down a path in which I was pretty positive was the correct one to take. Never fully certain, but confident enough that I said yes with partial confidence. I think we all felt anxious inside, because even when we tried making conversation, laughs and keeping things light-hearted, things just died out pretty quickly. We had our flashlights on, head torches, and did stroll for quite some time, when my friend told me to be quiet. We all stopped and just listened. This was it. Finally, I'm going to get some proof for myself that ghosts exist. But what came next was very unexpected. My friend told us to get into the bushes, turn every light off and hide quickly. I had no idea what he was talking about or why he seemed to be panicking. Even his girlfriend looked confused. But moments later, I shit you not, 2 guys just came down the path, strolling, casually, like it was a normal day. We could hear them talking about our car, saying that they want to find and rob us. One of them joked they could then kill us afterwards. But what scared me most was the other guy's response, saying that's exactly what he will do. Even more frightening was that every little sound came from the woods sent those guys into high alert. At one point, finally watching them walk off down a path, a twig snapped under my own foot, and they snapped around instantly, guns drawn. I froze like a deer in headlights. They bickered amongst themselves to go and check, and I had never prayed before, but right then, I prayed so much. My friend's girlfriend started crying, and I could see him cuddling her trying to calm her down. Thankfully, they didn't bother coming to check, and again, we watched them walk off. Now the best thing to do would be to go home as quickly as possible. But not my friend. He wanted to go and check out where they were going, and what they were doing. His excuse that came out of his mouth was that he wanted to make sure they didn't hurt anyone else. But what I knew in his mind was completely different. He got a kick out of it, and my adrenaline was certainly pumping, let alone what his girlfriend must have been feeling. But to my surprise, she too wanted to check it out, just for a bit longer. No point arguing, so we stuck to the trees and bounced forth from tree to tree, keeping ourselves hidden whilst trying our best to keep them out of our sights. Whilst extremely difficult, as we had to remain in darkness while being actually in a forest that was reportedly haunted, and they were using flashlights and walking on a path. Now, I knew the path led to a very open patch where they could walk off in any direction, and boy did that happen. We squatted down at the closest tree to the open patch in which they stood and watched as they split up, going in completely different directions. My friend had some crazy thought of him and his girlfriend going in one direction and me in the other. But I was firm in my decision that it was time to go home, even though I watched as they crossed over and started to make their way to follow the other guy. I turned around in a huff and see a gun pointed in my face. Gotcha. I fell to the ground, scared for my life, as I raised my hands and pleaded that I mean no harm and I'm just leaving. You've been following us for a while now, haven't you? He cocks his gun. Why? I told him that I was just ghost hunting and I thought they knew where to go. But he was swift in his responses, saying that I decided to follow them by hiding amongst the trees. I was choking on my own words when I heard my friend rugby tackling him to the ground. The gun went flying somewhere, and after a quick few punches we all set off down the path, running as fast as we could. No lights, nothing. Just ran and ran. We heard them chasing after us, with the other guy's gun being shot a few times. We quickly got back to the car, jumped in, started the engine and sped off as fast as we could. Turns out that the forum I went on had been used to lure people to that forest in order to do terrible and frightening things to them. Be careful what you stumble upon out there on the internet. My friend still jokes about it, but it still gives me nightmares of just how crazy all this was and how I almost died.